Chapter 12. Battle of the Roosters, Hayden. I dropped the tray, sending plates. Opened it, radar util need out and flatware crashing around us. A woman, and then closed it. What are you doing here? Hayden stood before me, his tousled hair golden against a gray Savile Row suit. The yellow Italian silk tie I'd given him last Christmas was knotted under the collar of a crisp white shirt. He looked very handsome. Are you all right? He smiled, eyeing the scattered china. I threw my arms around him, banishing all residual thoughts of Roy and inhaling the scent of leather and courtrooms and boardrooms with thick mahogany paneling and centuries-old Aubusson carpets. That's all, I'm fine, I said, just surprised. He pressed his lips to mine, giving me a long, soulful kiss, and for a moment I was back in New York, taking cab rides and making conference calls, riding in limousines and going to opera fundraisers and museum galas. I could see myself in our apartment, lounging on the sofa on a Sunday morning. Sipping coffee, newspapers spread out on the table, sunlight streaming in through the windows. We picked up the scattered dishes. And Hayden, you were coming, I asked. Followed me into the room. Why didn't you tell I didn't know I was coming until this afternoon? I turned to take his coat and saw him looking around. This is where you've been staying? His eyes darted from the earthenware bowl and cracked pitcher to the uncomfortable ladder-back chair to the tiny bathroom with my drinking glass of pens and pencils on top of the toilet tank. I slipped his coat over the back of the chair. It's not so bad. He gave me a skeptical look. Ellen Branford, queen of the five-star hotel circuit, telling me this isn't so bad. I'm impressed. Really, I said, taking his jacket. I think it's kind of cute. He raised his chin and peered at me. You look a little, I don't know, ... He paused. Something's different. He studied my face for a moment. Oh, you're not wearing any makeup. Maybe that's it. I'm not? I touched my cheek. Need it. Don't look so alarmed. He laughed. You don't. I wondered how I could have forgotten to put on makeup. I guess I was in such a rush. My grandmother's in a nursing home. I went to see an old friend of hers up here? Hayden asked, brushing my hair away from my face and studying my eyes. You wouldn't believe what I found out today. I told him about the man at the camera store and the painting at the Historical Society and the article at the library. There are things about my grandmother we never knew. He gave me a curious look, almost as though she had a secret life. Well, not a secret life, at least I don't think so. I mean, I hope not. But there are definitely things she never talked about. Two's kind of like solving a mystery, he said as we sat down on the bed. I'd love to see the paintings. You'll have to show me. I will. I want you to see them. But before we talk about any more of that, you have to tell me how you ended up here. I thought you were going to be in a settlement conference all day on that Dobson case. Hayden's smile spread across his face. What's going on? Tell me, I said. We settled it this morning. You did? Oh, Hayden, that's great. I threw my arms around him again. You said you didn't think it would ever settle? 29.5, he said, shaking his head, as though he couldn't believe it. I didn't think it. I knew he was speaking about millions, not thousands of dollars. Our client was getting the money, but our firm was getting a huge T out of it. It was another feather in Hayden's cap. Wow, that's fantastic, I said. He nodded. I'm happy. Dobson's board is ecstatic. It's a good settlement for them. I'm just glad it worked out. They ended up getting a pretty fair deal. Sometimes things go the right way, and this was one of those times. Congratulations, I said, feeling proud of him. You must have been extremely persuasive. Oh, I can be pretty persuasive when I want to be, he said, his smile turning mischievous now. I recall using my persuasive powers on you a few times. Maybe, I said, feigning indifference, but you'll never get 29.5 out of me? He took my hand, all kidding aside. You know what the best part about the settlement is? I shook my head. That I got to come up here and be with you. I was in a cab on my way back to the apartment, and then I thought, why don't I just go to Maine? So I grabbed a few things and got on a plane. Oh, Hayden, he had a way of making me feel like I could melt. I missed you, he said, drawing me close. I don't like being in our apartment without you. I put my head against his chest. I missed you. I kept thinking about you up here by yourself, he said. I thought this way you'd have some company and we could go back to New York together. He stood up and, speaking of New York, I brought you something. He winked at me as he took a package from his briefcase. What's this? Open it, he said, sitting down next to me again. I tore off the wrapping paper and saw that it was a book, The World of Henry Cartier-Bresson. Hayden, he's my favorite, I know. And it's a first edition, tea's beautiful. I began flipping through the pages of black and white photographs. The father of modern photojournalism. Yes, he definitely was. I paused at a photo of a man riding a bicycle through a narrow street in France. The picture was taken from a stairway. I love this one. Look at the curve of the steps and the iron railing. How beautiful the shapes are. And the man whizzing by on the bike, almost a blur. He had a half second to take that picture. Incredible. F11 and B. It's that old saying photographers use, I said. You know, it means the technical aspects aren't as important as being in the right place at the right time. I pulled Hayden toward me and kissed him. What an amazing gift. I can't wait to go. I'm glad you like it, he said. I closed the book and held it against my chest. I love it, he smiled. So tell me what's been going on. Did you finally get to meet the Tamis, Mr. Cummings? I looked down and shook my head. No, I'm not going to meet him. Why not? What happened? I pulled at a loose thread in the coverlet. Chet Cummings is. Well, he died. Hayden took my hand. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I nodded. Yeah, me too. When did it happen? 3 months ago? Oh no, what bad timing. You came all the way up here and, well, I'm sorry. A cool breeze blew through the window. Feeling a chill, I closed the sash, walked to the thermostat, and turned on the heat. Something groaned and clanked, and then a fan whirred. A metallic smell rose from the radiator vent on the floor, and a gust of lukewarm air shot out. Hayden put the pillows against the headboard, kicked off his shoes, and lay down on the bed. He loosened his tie and motioned for me to join him. I settled into the crook of his arm. So, tell me what happened, he said. You couldn't. So tell me what happened, he said. You couldn't. Deliver the letter and… No, I did deliver it, I said. I gave it to his nephew. His nephew? Neffine looked at me. His nephew, who, a guy named Roy Cummings, Chet was living in his house. Oh. He paused and then said, what's he going to do with it? Don't know, but I thought he should have it, don't you think? Hayden gave me a quizzical look. I don't know, Ellen. I'm surprised you did that. The letter wasn't addressed to him. I would have given it to the executor of the guy's estate or the court-appointed administrator if he… Is this guy the executor? I tried to remember what Roy said to me in the front yard. Any business of my uncle's is business of mine. Something like that. He hadn't actually said he was his uncle's executor, but that was the feeling I'd gotten, that he was taking care of his affairs. I hoped I hadn't jumped to conclusions. What if I did the wrong thing? Was I losing my edge? I nodded. Yes, I think so. You think so? No, I mean he is. He's the executor. Well then, I don't see a problem with that. Hayden stretched and let out a loud sigh. I helped him take off his gold cufflinks, the ones with the family crest on them, and he placed them on the bedside table. Then he began to kiss my neck. I closed my eyes and felt his breath, warm and familiar, his hair soft against my skin. His hair smelled like citrus, like the shampoo in our apartment. He unbuttoned my blouse, his fingers moving gently along the fabric, pulled off his tray and undid the buttons of his shirt. Then he leaned in and kissed me. The crack on the ceiling that looked like New Hampshire became soft and fuzzy, and as crickets hummed outside the window, we undressed and made love. Hayden was already up when I awoke on Sunday morning. Sitting next to me in bed, in his boxers and a blue t-shirt, he clicked away at his laptop. Good morning, I said, yawning and rubbing my eyes. What time is it? He looked at his watch. A little after 9. I could see a strip of light beneath the window shade. Does it look like it's a nice day? He continued to type away. I don't know. I haven't checked yet. You haven't looked. He shook his head. T've been working. He gave me a kiss on the cheek. Listen, Hayden, I said. I really want you to see Grand's paintings. I doubt the Historical Society is open today, but maybe we can go over to the Porters and see the one in their attic. Sounds good, he said. I'd love to see it to call Susan in a little while. My stomach rumbled and I realized I was famished. Something was happening to my appetite. Elle felt hungry all the time now. And the food I wanted to eat wasn't the super healthy variety I was used to. It was comfort food. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes, chicken and dumplings, macaroni and cheese, pot roast. I turned to Hayden. Do you want to get some breakfast? Yeah, just give me a minute, he said. I need to finish one thing. He grabbed my arm as I walked toward the bureau, his hand sliding down my bicep. Still got great muscle tone. He smiled. You've been working out up here? Not really. I wondered if there even was a place to work out. I took a pair of shorts and a top from the drawer. Oh, wait, I said. I forgot. I did some swimming. Swimming? He gave me a quick glance. Oh, yeah, you used to be on a team. Exeter, wasn't it? He took the cap off of a pen and began scribbling on a pad. Yep, Exeter, I said as I zipped up the shorts and pulled the top over my head. I raised one of the window shades and the sun exploded into the room. Leaning on the sill, I looked out and breathed the cool, grassy air. Here, after a minute, Hayden looked up. It's so quiet I couldn't tell if he meant quiet good or quiet bad. Yeah, it's quiet? I stepped into the bathroom, ready to pick up my toothbrush, and then I froze. Tucked into the corner of the mirror above the sink was an ivory card. The black lettering was raised, and I recognized the typeface. French script. I stepped closer and read the words. Mrs. Cynthia Parker Branford requests the honor of your presence at the marriage of her daughter, Eleanor Newhouse, to Mr. Hayden Stewart Croft. On Saturday, the 7th of October, at 6:30, St. Thomas Church, New York, New York. I began to feel a little twinge in my chest. I took the invitation from the mirror and held it in my hand as I sat on the edge of the tub. Saturday, October 7th. The letters were dark, definitive, engraved into the paper. So what's the verdict? Hayden called from the bedroom. The verdict? I was trying to remember how many invitations we had ordered. 200? 250? All I could recall was the number on the bottom of the guest list. 337 people. They were all being invited to watch us get married. Friends, business associates. The invitation, Hayden said, sounding important. What do you think? Isn't it great? I pictured the church, candles lit, flowers arranged, pews being filled, the string quintet playing the pieces we'd selected. I felt something prickly in my stomach. Yes, it's beautiful. Didn't I tell you Smutson was the best? Hayden said, appearing in the doorway. They're not engravers to the Queen for nothing. I nodded. No, I'm sure they're not, I said. You can't get that kind of quality here in the States. I ran my finger over the letters and wondered why I was suddenly feeling just the tiniest bit nervous. Maybe it was the thought of all those invitations making their way across the country to dozens and dozens of people, beckoning them to come to this event, to witness Hayden and me taking our vows. Maybe every bride got a little nervous at the first sight of her wedding invitation. Why not? It was probably a normal reaction. After all, there was something so concrete about it. No room for error now. It might as well be announcing Bror. Well, that wasn't the right word. That wasn't what I meant at all. I just meant what did I mean? I must be going crazy, I thought as I stood in front of the mirror. I'm engaged to the most fabulous man in the world, and we've got a beautiful wedding coming up. Suddenly, Hayden was next to me, his head over my shoulder. He took the card from my hand, back into the corner of the mirror, gazed at it, gave a satisfied smile, and tucked it. "Engravers to the Queen," he said with a little nod. Yes. I put my arms around him and held him as tightly as I could. Toddy, the night shift woman, was not at the front desk when Hayden and I walked by on our way to breakfast. Paula was back, and she did a little double take when she saw Hayden. I smiled cheerfully. "This is my Hayden Croft, just in from New York." I turned to Hayden. "Paula Victory, the owner of the inn." Paula blinked. "You're." She drew out the word as though it had 6 syllables. Then she looked at Hayden. "What's that name?" "Croft," he said. Croft. Never heard it before. It's English. My ancestors. "Oh no, I meant your first name. Did you say Haven?" Hayden adjusted the collar of his polo shirt. "No, Hayden, with a Y." "Aha," Paula said, glancing at me. Your Fiond, one side of her mouth turned up in a half grin. "Well, isn't that nice?" She looked Hayden up and down. Then she gave a little approving nod. "Those could they possibly sell? 400-500 copies a day asterisk, more like 3,000. He looked up. I waved my hand. "Nothing." The waitress returned with our breakfast, and I tried to get Hayden to taste my donuts. "Go on, you're in Maine now." I nudged him. "Chad will never know." "How?" he said. "Chad's been my trainer for 7 years. He'll know." But then he picked up the donut and took a small, cautious bite, chewing it slowly, savoring the flavor the way I'd seen him taste wine 100 times. "Wow," he said. "I didn't know a donut could be this good. Welcome to Maine." Something inside me bubbled with joy. It was a beautiful day, and we were going to share it. This mini vacation in Beacon would turn out to be a nice break for the two of us. I leafed through the Bugle, scanning an article about a police officer who had received a special commendation, an announcement about a rummage sale at St. Mary's Church, and a letter to the editor complaining about a property tax increase. I turned the page and saw an ad for a country fair sponsored by the Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. I wondered what it would be like. Butter churning contest with girls in white aprons, milk tastings. Could be fun. "Hayden, I think we should go to this." I pushed. "A country fair?" he said, "with horses and cows?" "That kind of thing, I guess. Why don't we check it out?" He took a bite of his omelette, and then he said, "I'm not really into horses and cows, but tour you." "Ellen, I'll do it." We lingered over breakfast, had seconds on the coffee, and then I folded up the Bugle and we walked outside. I called the Porter's house, but the phone rang and rang. Their voicemail finally picked up, and I left a message asking if I could bring Hayden to see the painting. On the way back to the inn, we passed the Beacon Dry Goods store, its front window filled with denim clothes and work boots and camping gear. "Let's stop in here for a second," I said, tugging Hayden's arm. "I want to buy a pair of jeans." "Have I ever seen you in jeans?" he asked as we stepped inside. "Elade?" "I can't remember the last time I wore a pair. But then I can't remember the last time I went to a country fair." I tried on a pair of straight-legged, low-rise, faded cans with a lot of stitching on the pockets and seams. Hayden whistled when I came out of the dressing room. "'Till take these," I told the salesman. "And I'm going to wear them." I turned to Hayden. "How about you?" He looked down at his khakis and topsiders. We walked back to the inn and unlocked the car. "If we go to this country fair," Hayden said, "am I going to have to look at chickens or anything?" I got into the passenger seat, holding up my hand as though I were taking an oath. "No chickens, I promise. Maybe just a couple of pigs?" He shook his head. "Pigs? Oh." Then his eyes lit up. Tell you what, I'll go to the fair if you find a place around here where I can play a little golf." I shook my head. "Sorry, honey, there isn't any place around here to play golf. Maybe just a driving range?" He started the engine while I looked at the Bugle. There was a map showing the location of the fairgrounds. It wasn't far from Kenland Farm. We drove for 15 minutes and passed the farm and then the Porter's house. That's Gran's old house, I said, pointing as we went by the empty driveway. Shortly after that, we turned into the fairgrounds, and a man directed us to a dirt parking lot where people were emerging from cars with children and strollers. Teenagers leaned against the sides of pickup trucks. At the edge of the lot, wildflowers had taken over, forming a thick border. I stopped to pick a bouquet of gold buttercups and yellow and white daisies. I plucked a sprig of Queen Anna on a branch of goldenrod. Then I stretched and took a deep breath. The air was mellow and sweet. "All right, I'm ready," I said, admiring my flowers as we followed the crowd to the entrance. A sign noted the fair's activities, which included a donkey and mule show, a draft horse obstacle course, an antique tractor pull, sheepdog demonstrations, an apple pie contest, and presentations with titles like Sharpening the European Scythe Blade and Introduction to Worm Composting. The fair took up several acres, with tents, booths, vendors, and food and demonstration areas. There were lines for the rides, which included a Ferris wheel and something that spun its riders around in pods. Fathers balanced toddlers on their shoulders, and elderly people sat on folding chairs. The aroma of wood-fired pizza and apple crisp hung in the air. We walked toward booths where people were selling flowers and herbs. I picked up a pot of thyme and held it to my face. It smelled like chicken roasting in my mother's kitchen. I saw a pot of lemon verbena and I took a leaf and rubbed it between my fingers. Now I was on the patio at Gran's house, sipping iced tea. We ambled around, checking out the local goods, maple syrup, dog biscuits, hand-dyed yarn, ottery, and paintings. We bought a box of blueberries and ate them as we wandered. We watched women spin fleece into yarn and saw German shepherds demonstrate sheepherding. "Let's go over there," I said, pointing to a large tent. People were milling around the entrance. Rooster crowed as we got closer. Hayden smirked. "I thought we agreed no chickens." "Come on," I said, taking his hand. "Let's just see what's in there." The smell of grain and animals hit me as soon as we entered. The first thing one saw was 24 wood and wire cages. Inside each one, a chicken clucked and pecked and scratched around as viewers walked by and admired them. "Oh, Hayden, look how pretty they are." I pointed to a black Jersey giant and a blue Andalusian with a plumy tail. The Andalusian cocked his head and scratched at the floor of the cage. "I guess they've got a certain kind of, charm," Hayden said with a cringe. "I think I'll see what else they have in here besides chickens." He strolled on ahead. I moved to the next cage, where a barred Plymouth Rock clucked away. Its black and white zigzag feathers made it look like an abstract painting. I bent down to get a closer look. "Aren't you a pretty bird?" I got down to eye level. The chicken bobbed its head at me. "Yes, you're so pretty, Ellen." I turned around. A man stood behind me. Dressed in jeans and a faded red New England t-shirt. A Red Sox baseball cap was on. Face, it was Roy. His head, and a day's growth of beard was on his to my feet. One managed to say hello. For a second I thought Eddie Abloud was rushing the Plymouth Rock rooster chose that moment no crow. Sending an ear-splitting greeting through the tent, Roy tipped back the brim of his cap. "Hello yourself. I thought you were leaving." His eyes were too blue. "Nothing could be that blue." "I was supposed to leave today," I said, "but I had to see someone yesterday. And now there's been a little change in plans." "In that case, I see you're using your time wisely," he smiled. "Looking at roosters and picking." Roy took my hand and opened it. I had forgotten I was still holding the flowers. He said. "Buttercup, Queen Anne's lace." When he let go, my hand felt empty. I could barely speak. A little girl, maybe 4, approached one of the rooster's cages with her father. "Dangerous, don't get too close," he said. "It might be." Roy looked at me, cocked his head, and scratched his chin. "You're wearing jeans." I knew there was something different. My weekend look? I couldn't tell whether he approved or not. "It's suits you," he said. "You can really fit in at the Andalusian hen with her fancy tail." preened her feathers and bobbed her head toward the adjoining cage, as though she were trying to get the attention of the rooster next to her. "What's that one doing, Daddy?" the little girl asked, pointing to the hen. "Why is it dancing?" The dad wrinkled his brow. "I don't know, honey. Maybe they're trying to have a conversation." The girl giggled and they strolled away. "All right, I've seen every damn chicken gives." It was Hayden walking toward us. He stopped when he saw Roy. I let the flowers fall from my hand. "Hayden," I said, adding an extra bright note to my voice. "This is Roy Cummings. Remember, I told you about him. Chet Cummings's nephew." I turned to Roy. "This is my Hayden Croft." My throat felt dry as I watched them shake hands. I thought I saw something change in Roy's face. Maybe his jaw tightened just a little. "Hayden surprised me last night," I said. He showed up at the Victory Inn where I'm staying. The Plymouth Rock rooster began strutting around, looking a bit agitated, ruffling its black and white feathers and clucking. Roy put his hands in the pockets of his jeans. "That's great. You came from where?" "Manhattan." Hayden nodded. "Yes. I settled a case yesterday and I thought, why don't I just fly up? Ellen tells me you're from Beacon. Celebrate?" So I did. He paused and then added, "That's right," Roy said, nodding. "I grew up here. Seems like a nice place," Hayden said. "Pretty quiet, though. What do people do for R&R? Any golf courses around?" Roy studied Hayden, from his topsiders to his cantaloupe-colored polo shirt. "Oh, you're a golfer," Hayden nodded. "Yeah, but not often enough. Are you?" "No. Never really got interested in it," Roy said. "There are plenty of other things to do here, though. In the winter, you can cross-country ski or snowshoe or go ice skating. Drive a skimmobile." He paused and we stepped back from the chicken as a group of teenagers passed through. "In the summer," he went on, "people fish. A lot of folks have motorboats or they go sailing. Some people like to swim." He glanced at me. "Yes. Ellen told me she's been doing some swimming," Hayden said. I shot Roy a warning glance. Hayden was glad I was able to get some exercise. "I didn't think you'd ever go in such cold water," Hayden said. Roy tipped his cap back. "But if you were on the Exeter swim team and you made it to the Nationals, I would think." "That was a long time ago," I said, glaring at Roy. I saw him stifle a smile. He leaned against a display table. "So how long are you staying?" "Just a few days," Hayden said, putting his arm around me and pulling me closer. "I thought La better come up here, since Elle can't seem to get Ellen to leave." I forced a smile. Roy cocked his head and stared at me. "Is Beacon growing on you, Ellen? That happens to people, you know? Sometimes they come and they never leave." "I just need to stay a couple of extra days," I said. "Tie up some loose ends in connection with my grandmother." Hayden squeezed my shoulder. "I'm not too worried about Ellen overstaying her welcome here. She's a city girl if I ever saw one. I don't think she'd survive in a town this small. She's used to moving way too fast. She doesn't have the patience." I wasn't sure how I felt about Hayden's remark. Yes, I'd lived in the city for years, and no, I didn't have any desire to live somewhere else. But did that mean I couldn't do it if I really wanted to? He made it sound as though I were incapable of change. Roy shrugged. "Sometimes, people don't realize they can slow down until they do it." He looked from Hayden to me. "I think Ellen could probably live and be successful anywhere, including Beacon." "Well, thanks for that vote of confidence," I said, to laugh and make light of Roy's comment. There was a strange undercurrent in the conversation, like voltage barely registering on a gauge. It was making me feel uncomfortable. Hayden's hand stiffened against my shoulder. "I didn't mean she couldn't do it," he said. "I just don't think she'd be as happy living outside of an urban area." He turned to me. "Right, honey? What was going on here?" I felt like I was in the middle of a tug of war. "I don't know," I said, Hayden's arm suddenly feeling heavy on my shoulder. "I live there now and I'm happy, but I think I could be flexible." "Well, there you go," Roy said, smiling. His dimples were showing again. "We're leaving in a few days," Hayden said in a tone that indicated he was through discussing this topic. I slid out from under his arm. Well, I think we ought to get going, Hayden, don't you? I took his hand so I could guide him away. Maybe the Porters will be home and we can stop by. I turned to Roy. I found the house where my grandmother grew up, and I want to show Hayden. So I think Will said, "Where is it?" Asterisk. Oh, that's great that you found our house, Roy, on Comstock Drive. Roy nodded. Near Kenland Farm. Yes, right by there, I said. We passed that on. Blueberry Farm. Yeah, it was, Roy said. A long time ago. Looks like it's just gone to ruin now, Hayden said. Too bad. It's a huge piece of undeveloped property. I'm surprised somebody hasn't come in and built something there, houses or condos. He grinned at me. Maybe a golf course? Hayden's got golf on the brain, I said, smiling as a crowd of children entered the tent, escorted by 2 young women who were instructing them to stay with the group. Why does it need to be developed? Roy asked, a little edge to his voice. Why does everything have to be turned into houses or condos or a golf course? Why can't some things just be left alone? The black Jersey giant rooster, with its bright red comb, began pecking anxiously at the floor of his cage. Well, I was only kidding about the golf course, Hayden said, glancing at me. Ellen can tell you I can't count the number of stories I know about nice towns that got ruined by overdevelopment, Roy said, shaking his head. People come up north from the city, developers wanting to make money, you know. They find a place like Beacon and they think it's nice because it's pretty and it's quiet. So they build a bunch of houses or condos. He looked toward the black rooster, but I could tell he was seeing something else. Yeah. Then they put in a golf course and a country club, Roy went on. A big marina and a bunch of restaurants. And pretty soon they've got the Gap and Victoria's Secret and Bed Bath & Beyond right there on their doorstep. And then they wonder why it's not pretty anymore and it's not quiet. He looked at me. And then they move on to some other place, while the people who have lived there all along are stuck with a town they don't even know anymore. The black Jersey giant rooster shook its wings and let out the loudest screech I'd ever heard. I jumped. That thing's got quite a voice, I said with a nervous laugh. Yeah, he does, Roy said, his mouth a thin, straight line, like a dash between his ears. Rubbed my arms to get rid of the goosebumps that had appeared. Let's hope Beacon never ends up with a mall and chain stores. That would be horrible. Roy glanced around the tent. Yeah, well, we'll see. When he turned back to us, the blue of his eyes had vanished into slate. It may already be happening. His voice was flat, cold, like something buried deep underground. Kenland Farm is being subdivided into 1 million pieces, and they're all being sold. So your idea about developing it, he looked at Hayden, it's already happening. Maybe the golf course will be next? Neither Hayden nor I said a word. And before I could think of an appropriate response, Roy tipped the brim of his baseball cap, muttered, "See you," turned, and was gone. Hayden and I looked at one another. What was that all about? He said. I grimaced, not sure. He didn't seem too happy about the idea of that farm becoming a golf course. Hayden shook his head, confused. What did I say? I wasn't trying to insult the man. I know, Hayden. Let's just forget it. And what was that lecture about developers? Hayden began walking toward the entrance to the tent. Let's just get out of here. I followed him through the fairgrounds, his pace steadily quickening as we wove around blueberry vendors and rides, past the homegrown from Maine displays, and veered through the arts and crafts area toward the exit. Wait up, I called when he got too far ahead. Come on, he yelled back. Let's get out of this hayseed place. Then he turned to look at me and tripped over a stack of lobster pots artfully arranged as a display. He went sprawling to the ground, landing on his stomach, arms and legs splayed. Hayden, I ran and crouched down beside him. His eyes were closed in a grimace. A few people stopped and stared, and an old man sprang out of a nearby booth to see what happened. My ankle, Hayden moaned. What's wrong? I don't know, but it hurts like hell. Why'd they leave those stupid cages in the middle of the street? Anyway, he tried to raise himself to a sitting. Do you want some help? I offered my hand. He waved me off. No, I can do it, he said brusquely. Gradually, he sat up. Then he clutched his ankle and took several deep breaths. Maybe I should get some help, I said. No, let's just go. Leaning on me, he slowly stood up and dusted himself off. Are you going to be okay? I asked as he limped toward the parking lot, using my shoulder as a crutch. No, I'm not going to be okay. I think I sprained the damned thing. I told you I didn't want to see any chickens. They were mostly roosters, I thought. But I wasn't about to correct him.